Here's your living Tefila manual. This is part of building block number 7, how to make davening real for children. Living Tefila is its name. There are 3 parts to this manual. The first part is really the background behind understanding for a teacher's sake or parent, what is Tefillah really meant to be? Oh, it's a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. What's the definition of Tefillah? Oh, it's Avodah Shebelev, which means literally discipline of the mind. It's all hundreds of makaros that cover all this. It also tells you what's the context of the mitzvah of Tefillah. So you'll find it in the second paragraph of Kriyat Shema, where it's introduced as to love Hashem and to serve Him with all your thoughts. So the mitzvah of serving Him with all your thoughts, which Chazal tell us is Tefillah, is in the context of loving Hashem. So all this is explained as the background of understanding when we're teaching Tefillah to children, what's the real goal? So in the Hashkafa part, that's all covered in the part 1, where we conclude with the 5 goals of Tefillah. There are 5 goals of davening, and that is, number 1, it's bakashas, not necessarily in this order. It's requests, and hodah, thank you, gratitude. And number 3, praise. Those are the 3 most common parts of the structure of davening. There's a 4th and 5th. The 4th is all those 3 are meant to inject inside us a deep love for Hashem. And number 5 of that is to recognize on our own that through my praise and my thank you and seeing how you are so inside every part of my life and having a relationship with you through tefillah, through brachas, through davening, through birkas hamazon, through asher yatsa, through birkas hashacha, etc., what ends up happening is I start to realize how much you, Hashem, love me. And that's like a clincher. So that's in part 1. Part 2 of the 3 parts in this manual. So not a very big manual. It's only 39 pages for the first 2 parts. The last part is the history of Tefillah. So part 2 covers the nuts and bolts of how to teach davening. And there are 6 building blocks of Tefillah. Building block number 1, the children have to know Suras HaOsios. They need to know the shapes of all the letters. Number 2, they need to know all the nekudos, all the vowels. Number 3, they have to know how to blend. Number 4, they have to know reading accuracy and reading fluency. Then they have to know shirashim, the most common, frequently reappearing shirashim in davening. So all of that is extremely similar to actually building block number 1, which is language acquisition. So there's a lot of overlap over there. But you have to understand that if we're going to teach tefillah so it's meaningful for a child, and this is all explained in the manual and also on the DVDs, the manual will explain to you that for davening to be meaningful for a kid, the kid has to be able to read accurately and fluently. So he must know all the letters and all the nekudas and how to blend in order to graduate to reading accuracy and fluency. If he can't read accurately and fluently, then guess what's going to happen in 1st grade when the Rebbe starts chanting the morning davening 10, 15 minutes every morning in 1st grade, the kids who can't read accurately or fluently can't find the place, so they end up memorizing the davening but can't follow it inside. So they're spending that 10, 15 minutes, and then later in 2nd grade, half an hour or more, they're spending the time practicing not davening, because they don't know what they're saying, and they're practicing not reading accurately and fluently. So on a 0 to 10 scale, you ask almost any teenager what their love for davening is, you go find out. And it's all in proportion to how much they understand. And it's all in proportion to how much they feel they actually have a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So in part 2, it's really key. We go through all the building blocks. The next building block is once we're building vocabulary, we teach the children the most frequently reappearing words of davening. So we'll really go to town on certain words like Baruch, Ata, Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokeinu, Melech, Ha'olam, Asher, Kiddishanu, B'mitzvosav. We go through all sorts of different words that come up again and again in order that the children get that really into their bloodstream, so they know exactly what that word means when they're davening it. Another building block, which is huge, is that we don't let the children just daven by rote. We teach them a 1-line message in English, which is not a translation. We're not up to translation yet. Before you get to translation, we teach a 1-line message in English for that part of davening. So if they're saying, thank you Hashem, we're saying the bracha, al netilat yadayim, they will say the words afterwards, thank you Hashem, I love you, for water, for hands. Pokeach Ivrim. We'll say the bracha and then we'll say, thank you Hashem for my eyes. Zokef Kifufim, thank you for my spine, my spinal cord, my nervous system. Every part of my body is because of Zokef Kifufim. I'm able to use my spine, and because of it, every other part of my body is a skeleton. We have Mal Bisharumim. Thank you for my wardrobe. Shasali Kol Sarki. Thank you for providing me all my dinis, for my shoes. We've got one-liners, Baruch She'ama. Each one of the major parts of davening, we've created a one-line insert, which the children do in the earlier years, so that they get into the rote of understanding they're talking to Hashem through Tefillah, because that was the original intent of davening, that we should get back to the original davening, which was spontaneous conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 1-800-ALMIGHTY. Free call. Don't try that number. Actually, it happens to be a oil company in Texas. But the 1-800-ALMIGHTY is the Rebbeinu Shleilam. This is a free call. 1-800, my ultimate therapist, anytime, any day. But Chazal saw Beruach Kadsham that they had to put our davening into a script. That was the Siddur. But that's 1,300 years after the mitzvah was given. So the mitzvah wasn't given to be reading a script, other people's words. It was meant to be my spontaneous conversation from my mind, from my heart, my emotions, what's going on in my life, and pour my heart out to Kadosh Baruch Hu. So what we've done, excuse me, in using these building blocks is identify what are the building blocks a child needs to know in order to make davening meaningful, or need to read accurately and fluently. You need to know the basic vocabulary, and then one line, not translation, just one line, meaningful statements that bring out a message in that particular part of davening. So that's in part 2. And part 3 is actually the history of Tefillah. And even though it's like half of the book, it's only to give chizuk to you, the teacher or parent, to understand that in the history of davening, the original Tefillah was always spontaneous conversation, and that Shemona Esrei has been designed as the highest pinnacle of all of our prayer, is designed that the first 3 blessings are all praise, and the middle 13 are all requests, which are meant to be platforms for your personal conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you see that when Chazal legislated the Siddur, the purpose of the davening is not to substitute the original spontaneous conversation. It was actually meant to regain the grip that we were losing because of going into Galus and not knowing the language so well, and all the reasons Chazal give us for why we had to have a Siddur in place of the original Tefillah. It's not in place of, it's a platform to get back into the original relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So there's many Makoros that's brought that is the original Tefillah, and that's what Tefillah is supposed to be. So that's a history of Tefillah and his Hispaidus. This is a very powerful manual to help children have a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The last item which I've got to mention that's in here is scope and sequence. And that's to help teachers or parents understand that according to Chazal, for a girl 12 years old, bat mitzvah, and a boy bar mitzvah 13, they do not need to be knowing all of davening by 6, 7, 8 or 9 years old. Chazal allowed that it's supposed to be till by 13 you're supposed to know all of davening. Unfortunately, we're in a race that we can't, it's very hard to get out of it. But what I've based this upon is Rav Wolbe of blessed memory, who was extremely makpid, very emphatic, that we stop the race of getting kids saying so much davening before bar mitzvah, because in doing that, we're creating artificial pressure and forcing them to say words they don't understand. Because we're cutting out all the main building blocks that scaffold and enable that the child will have a meaningful relationship, and the tefillah will be living, it will be alive. So we give scope and sequence for 1st through 8th grade in here as well. Enjoy.